While widely and regularly panned by critics, the Transformers series has routinely done very well in theaters. Making $4.3 billion worldwide, there's always a chance for another sequel when it comes to this franchise. After directing 5 of them, Michael Bay stepped aside to allow a new story to be told. And in 2018, Bumblebee premiered to the acclaim of both critics and audiences alike. This breathed new life into the lucrative property, and yet another sequel was put into production. It's Transformers: Rise of the Beasts. I'm Ronald Young Jr., and I'm leaving the theater. All right, this is Ronald, and I am leaving the theater after seeing Transformers: Rise of the Beasts. Transformers: Rise of the Beasts, directed by Stephen Caple Jr., written by Job Harold, Darnell Metayer, Josh Peters, Erich Hoeber, and John Hoeber. Starring Anthony Ramos, Dominique Fishback, Luna Lauren Velez, Tobe Nwigwe, Dean Scott Vazqeuez, Michael Kelly, and Peter Cullen. I am not here alone. I am here with
Pam.
Pam is back again, following after Nicole's example, only using her first name. I love it. It's called the mononym method. Great to have you back. Let's talk. This is the 7th movie in the Transformers franchise. This is the second of the new reboot-esque movies and when I say new reboot-esque, there are 5 films that were all directed by Michael Bay. You could go to Rotten Tomatoes, and we will probably unpack that more about what that means for this franchise. But the last 2 movies, Bumblebee and Rise of the Beasts, were directed by new people, were written by new people, and the stories were different. In this one, we are introduced to a new set of Transformers, which of course are alien robots. So these are Transformers called the Primals, and they are from Cybertron. I think they're also from Cybertron. They might be, nope, they're not from Cybertron. They might be Cybertron adjacent. I don't know. But the point is, they're Maximals, that's what they're called. They're called Maximals. And so these Maximals, I don't know if they're from Cybertron. The bottom line is they're somehow related to the Autobots, which are somehow related to the Decepticons. And all of them are on Earth fighting over a MacGuffin, which you will find when you watch the movie. It's not even really that important for you to know right now, but they're trying to fight off a much bigger power called Unicron, which devours planets. Now, that's a lot of setup in this one. However, it was a movie. Let me ask you, Pamela, what did you think of this movie?
It was a tough one for me. I struggled to get into the storyline. I felt like the storyline was a little all over the place and or choppy. There were certain characters that I was like, I could have been okay with you not being in this at all. And it gave me just like pure surface level, nothing else going on. I was bummed. I'd say I was bummed most of the movie.
Did you like this better than the other ones or less?
Far less.
Whoa, I have never been in more disagreement with a guest on leaving the theater. We are about to fight because I thought this was far better than any Transformers movie I've seen except Bumblebee. Way better. Way better.
First one.
Yes.
Even the first.
Way better.
I don't know about that.
Way better. Okay, I'll tell you why. One, I think the biggest problem that Michael Bay has always had with all of these movies is that they're always a big mess, and he focuses too much on the human drama and their interaction with the Autobots, as opposed to just giving me what I came to see, which is a bunch of Transformers fighting over actual Transformers things. And so what we had here was two groups of Transformers fighting over Transformers things, and on the other side you have humans that are actually useful. In every other film we've seen, the humans have been, if you take the humans out, the same plot line could have actually happened. In this one, you can't, because without one of them, you're not translating the actual language that's on the thing, and without the other one, you're not actually having heroic actions or actually a plan or giving the humans any type of agency to say, hey, the Autobots are doing one thing, but I think we as humans need to do something else because what they seem to be doing is selfish. On top of that, I think that Optimus Prime going on an emotional journey of saying, like, I don't like humans and now I'm actually going to work with the humans, I thought that was done very well.
I don't know. I think I really struggled with, I actually hated that part.
Why is that?
It was about, like, more about the robots and less about, like, there was interaction together, but it was missing, like, an overarching plot for me. And I am unsure as to why, but I was literally falling asleep, which I'd never do at the movie theater. At my home, for sure.
When you think of, because when you're talking about the overarching plot, I guess I'm struggling to see how, I'm thinking of the other movies, and there's 5 of them.
To be fair, I did not see the last, like, 3 Michael Bay ones because I agree, they're trash overall. Mm-hmm. I really liked the first one, and I really liked Bumblebee, so I think my bar was there. And this just came in under that bar as far as, I loved the main guy, like, I thought he was a great character to have in there. I don't know. I think for me, it's just the way that it's written and in general, and maybe that's just like, I miss the Transformers boat as a kid to, like, fall in love with the, like, the one-liners and, like, the stuff like that doesn't get me. To me, it was like cheese on top of cheese on top of cheese.
This sounds like you might not like Transformers.
No, I love Transformers.
But I'm like,
my first vehicle's name was Optimus Prime. I love Transformers.
But to like the lore is one thing. But I mean, a lot of this movie in terms of what Michael Bay was doing in his, I'm comparing this strictly to something that exists. It feels like what he was doing in his was a lot of normal Michael Bay-isms. These are jokes that you could see in The Island, that you could see in, I think he did Armageddon, you could see in Armageddon, you could see in Bad Boys. Maybe he didn't do Armageddon, but you can see in Bad Boys. There's no real difference from any of those movies except this one he has giant robots. Right. In this one, when you think of any of the one-liners, for instance, there's a point where Bumblebee is interacting with Optimus Prime, and he says something, and Optimus turns to basically says, I don't want you going to the drive-in anymore. And I'm like, that's a funny line, and that's not like it's not a fart joke. It's not like a sophomore humor, which is what Michael Bay is used to. This one, I think what I liked about it is because it felt like a cartoon, it didn't end up being like 80,000 army men on screen shooting at something while also trying to, like, work within the Transformers in order to fix that. Yeah. But that didn't work for you.
Yeah. No, I can understand. I mean, to me, it sounds like then you just don't like Michael Bay.
And no, I don't. I think his movies were, but all of these movies were garbage with him.
Yeah. Well, but that's what I'm saying is then you're just comparing, like, this new, like, fork in the road for Transformers just to, like, Michael Bay's trash. And of course, to Michael Bay's trash, it's going to look like, oh, interesting. And I do hear you on the fact that it's, like, more about the actual Transformers. And it was battles between Transformers rather than weird human storylines. I can get behind that. But I think as a movie where I'm not thinking about, like, Michael Bay's movies at all and just looking at this movie as if I just came to it for the first time and have little interest in the back storyline, because you don't necessarily need to know all that. I do still think it was, like, kitschy. in some ways. And it did come off like a cartoon in a lot of ways. Like towards the end, especially, like at that point, you're just dealing with like straight animation, because so much of it is just robot versus robot things going on.
Yeah, see, I think that's a feature for me.
Yeah.
So, and I'm like, and to compare to Michael Bay, like, I also liked Bumblebee.
Yeah.
Like, I thought Bumblebee, but I think Bumblebee does the same thing.
I thought it was so much better than this.
I think it's better. I don't think it's so much better. Because I think watching it, it's the same thing where I remember I walked out, and I don't remember if I did a review of this, but I do remember saying, I liked this movie because it is a cartoon. It is exactly what it's supposed to be. Like, it's robots, and the way the humans are interacting with the robots is a way that makes sense in this universe. Like, all of that, it felt like I was watching the Transformers the cartoon.
Yeah.
Watching this one also felt like that. And I feel like if you talk about like the kitschiness and all that, I'm like, well, yeah, it's a cartoon. Like, I feel like there's only so much. And as a matter of fact, I was thinking this when they were driving off the bridge and there was like a transforming robot driving across a metal bridge that came out of a MacGuffin that built itself on a volcano in Peru while coming out of there with an ape that transforms into a different type of robot. With all of that was happening, I remember thinking, there's only so good that these movies can be. Like, as the subject matter itself, there's only so good that these movies can be. And I think this hits that. Because I'm saying, like, watching it, I'm like, how much better can you get when you're literally, there's only so much serious you can be about, like, there's only so serious you can be when it's, transforming aliens that turn into cars and animals on the planet. And I'm sitting there watching, I'm like, well, I'm engaged, and this is good. And I remember the ways in which I was not engaged when it was just like a bunch of explosions and dudes shooting at them in Michael Bay. So I feel like the translation is better, but I'm with you because I think Bumblebee did a better job of like telling me one story, but that one story was a cartoon, you know? And I think that's where I'm like, that's how I felt watching this one.
Yeah. I think Bumblebee had just more of a plot line in my mind than this one did. That, or maybe it was just a plot line that was just more interesting to me as a human. And that's totally fine and understandable.
What do you rate this movie?
I would rate this movie. Oh, you're not gonna like it, Ronald. I'm gonna give this one just like a 2.
All right, I give it a 3.25. And this episode is coming out before the Flash episode, so I think most people won't understand why we just laughed like that. But yeah, I give this one a 3.25. I would definitely watch it again. I think it was, and I think I have the benefit of comparing against the other movies that we've just seen, which is like The Flash. It's not as good as The Flash, I know that. It's not as good as Little Mermaid, I know that. It's not as good. I liked it better than Fast 10, which I think I gave a 3. So I feel good about that. I think I barely gave it a 3 because it started getting me emotional towards the end. So yeah, I think this is better than Fast 10, but it's certainly not as good as The Flash or any of the other ones I've seen. So I think the benefit is having them move together. So I'm like fairly certain a 3.25 is about where it's at. And I'm interested to see where they go next because where they drop this movie at the end kind of builds it out into more movie. Are you interested in seeing any other Transformers movies or whatever the crossover comes with this movie?
If the crossover is what I hope it is, yes. If it is not, then this is probably my last one, and I'll just rewatch the first one in Bumblebee whenever I feel like it.
Yeah, I don't think this is the series for you. Like, what I'm learning during this review is I'm like, and I think we'll see as it comes out, which I think is perfectly fine. Because we were talking to Glenn, and he was like, I've never seen a Transformers movie. And I was like, honestly, if I woke up in a universe and I'd only seen Bumblebee in this movie, I would walk out being like, these movies are fantastic. But I've seen 7 of these movies, and 5 of them are so bad. Like, one of them has an 18% on Rotten Tomatoes. With 18, it is hard to get below 30. Like, 18 is absolutely ridiculous. So I think in terms of improvement, it's certainly the most improved. But I mean, if I'm rating this movie at a 3.25, that's still not very high in terms of like what a summer movie does. But this movie is going to make $1 billion easily.
Yeah. I think some of it for me also goes back to just like, and we've talked about this before, the integrity of writing in Hollywood and the standard that I wish that they would push for rather than just settling for like, oh, we know this is going to make us money. I think I really appreciate that about international movies and international TV shows. They are willing to let a story die when the end of the story has happened, or they're willing to like kill off characters and like you stick to that. I appreciate that in a way that American TV and movies don't always do, and I just personally want something that challenges me a little bit more. And it doesn't have to be a ton. I love a good blockbuster movie. No, but I love a good blockbuster movie.
But this isn't the one for you, though.
But I'm just saying, I think they could push it a little harder and like do something that is advancing their own industry. And when you just keep putting out movies like this, the fact that this is the 7th movie and then you're talking about Fast and Furious 10 is bananas.
I mean, we talked about this. I mean, I think that criticism, I get it, but I think that criticism isn't necessarily, like, I don't know how hard, there's a movie critic who just stopped reviewing movies as a result. And I remember my critique of that was that this is where movies are now. And like when you walk into one like these, when you walk into something like this, I think one of the most important things to know is that these, like gymnastics, these movies have like a highest possible score they can get. Like walking into this one, there was no way in the world that a Transformers Rise of the Beasts, unless the scale is broken, was going to be better than about 3.5. That's what I think. I'm like, and it didn't get there for me. It got to 3.25, I think. And I think, but if you walk into something like Tenet, for example, Tenet has the potential, which is a blockbuster, theoretically, but Tenet has the potential to go up to 5 stars, be both critically acclaimed and loved by audiences. Yeah. Then you go back to something like Inception, which also has the ability to be critically acclaimed and loved by audiences. So when I think about like the idea of like whether the writers are doing the right thing or not, I mean, like in some cases, it just boils down to like, someone is going to write these movies, like someone is, and either we're going to get what Michael Bay is giving us, or we're going to get what the team of 5 writers on this movie just gave us. And I think in this case, or even in the case of Bumblebee, they're doing better with these than other ones. But I'm like, I don't know. There's not much we can say. There's not much we can do about the blockbusters.
I remember my thought
about that way. Yeah.
A bajillion years ago. My thought was, why do they keep trying to go home? You know?
The robots?
Yeah.
Well, this is also the other thing in continuity. This is the first time they want to go home.
Okay. Yeah, right. Because it was set earlier, which makes, and like I was getting that towards the end, but in general, like that's the premise of so many of these movies is like, how do we get home? And how can that continue to be the same premise? We can't push the needle just like a smidge further beyond that and come up with a different plot line. It just feels like they get stuck in their like, this is the Transformers world. This is what we're going to do. We're going to make it work. We know we're going to make a lot of money. So we don't really care, which shows. And me, just as like a lifetime movie lover, is just like, I hate that.
That's fair. That's fair. And with that, Leaving the Theater is a production of Oh It's Big Ron Studios. Alexandra Ketch of Bias Studios mixes the show. Thank you, Alex. Show art from Heather Wilder. Theme music by the mysterious Breakmaster Cylinder. For more information about Transformers Rise of the Beasts or Pamela Perez, check out our show notes. You can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at Oh It's Big Ron. That's at OHITSBIGRON. You can find out more about this show and other Oh It's Big Ron Studios shows by following us on Instagram at Oh It's Big Ron Studios and on Twitter at Oh It's Big Ron Stew, that's STEW. Leaving the Theater will be back soon. Thanks for listening. And thanks for being on the show.
Of course, anytime. I hope this isn't my last time. Okay, bye.